And welcome to Creator Toolbox, the ServiceNow show that brings you tools for your toolbox. That's about as simple as it could get. We are here for you, developers and admins, and let's start with some introductions. We'll start with that guy first.
Hey everybody, my name is Brad Tilton. I am on the outbound product management team for all of our Next Experience products. I previously was a developer advocate, so not new to Creator Toolbox, but really happy to be back.
Thank you, Brad. And my name is Chuck Tomasi, Senior Developer Advocate at ServiceNow. Been here since 2010, was a customer for a couple of years before that, and a long history of tech and IT and computers going back decades. I do have to admit, I got a little bit of an extra laugh when I did that to Lauren, because I do stuff like that to her on stage all the time. She's driving the cameras back and forth. So that's we're just going to roll with it. This is a live stream, so this is not produced. You're going to see us possibly make some mistakes like that. Never. Welcome. If you are joining us, don't forget to like and subscribe. I wouldn't be on YouTube if I didn't say that at least once. There we go. A couple of quick announcements before we get started. We do have Hacktoberfest starting. So go over to our developer.servicenow.com blog and check it out. There's full information about that. Is that the right? That's the right link. Okay, it's a little short for some reason. devlink.sn/blog. We have Hacktoberfest. You can earn some swag. Earl just put out a wonderful video yesterday showing what you can get if you participate in Hacktoberfest and do it right. We also have Call for Devies. Call for Content is coming up soon, but I'll talk about that another time. But the Devies, our App of the Year award entries are opening October 20th. So watch for an announcement on that. We will also have that on our blog. Maybe even have our blog migrated to the new platform soon. Finally. But the Devies is a great way to get your recognition and showcase what you've built. Now, this is an app that must be in production so that you have a value prop behind it. Say, we saved this much money and we saved this much time or increased revenue, whatever it is that you do to tell your story around that application. We will be doing a podcast shortly with last year's winners. So that will coincide shortly before registration. So mark your calendars. It's open for about 3 weeks. Don't delay. Get your ideas together. Talk to your team. October 20th is when you want to start doing those entries. Okay, commercials are over. Brad, what are we doing today?
All right. So my products here at ServiceNow are UI Builder and Workspaces and components and things like that. So I wanted to share what we have in Vancouver for those products. And so, yeah, let's get into that.
Love it.
We've got a demo that I'm going to walk through that is probably less than a planned demo and more of a bullet point demo. So we'll see if we run into anything crazy here. But I've got a few different sections. The first one I'm sure has been talked about on some of the dev program stuff already. But the first one is one of the big things in San Diego when we launched the new UI was to access my update set and application picker. I have to click. It requires an extra click. I can't just glance at, what those things are set at. There is, if you are an SN Utils user, which should be just about every developer or admin, where their company allows them to use Chrome extensions, or I think it's Firefox and other extensions as well. There's a great little thing that shows the update set and application pickers. But we finally have been able to work that into the product. And so I'm just going to show real quick how to enable that. So we're going to go to the list of properties.
Can I ask you to make your font just a wee bit bigger?
I can. All right. I may have to go back down once we get into UIB.
Right.
It's not like little screens. That's one of when we're at Knowledge and I'm watching people do my UIB labs on like a Surface or something. It's always very painful. I always take that back to our other teams and say, hey, can we make this easier? All right. I think false is the right way. Disabled. Yes, we want it to be false. Disabled equals false always throws me.
It's like inactive equals true.
That's right. Let's do a hard refresh here. I think that'll get it to me. There we go. So if you noticed, my little globe icon switched to this instance tools utility icon. When I click on that, I get this bar here. And this little message here actually comes from a system property. Before the new UI, it actually showed up to the right of the logo up here. So this is a good way. It's not a great way, but you can differentiate between your different instances with that. But it also shows your application and update set picker. I believe 5 total pickers show up here. And so one of the questions we get is like, why didn't we just add it to this bar up at the top? And with all of the new admin configurable menus here, where you could have lots of menus across the top, we've kind of added more things here. We did a lot of this for accessibility. We added the easy favoriting here. So there really wasn't space to add the update set picker or all 5 of the pickers that you can add. So I think it's application, update set, domain, language, and there's one other one. I think it's encryption related, but I can't remember what it is. So I think there's 5 total pickers that can show up. So obviously that's a lot of screen real estate, especially if you're zoomed in a lot like I am. So yeah, we're going to start with that. So that was task number 1. We have completed it. So we get at least a 20% here. And then John has filled in the chat what the property name for this is.
Okay.
By default, it's service management. So this was actually, this property name actually came from a feedback session we did with all the developer MVPs. It was probably a couple of years ago. It was after the San Diego release. And one of the big pieces of feedback was like, hey, we really use that property to differentiate or kind of say what the instance does, especially for a subprod. Some of our customers have lots of different subprods, and so we want to differentiate between them, and we use that. So we took that and added it here. So we do listen to feedback.
Nice.
All right. So from here, let's move into kind of workspace improvements. And so these are going to be things that don't directly apply to developers, but that developers will want to know about.
Brad, real quick, when you turn on that instance tools bar, is that persistent? Does it stay on? Like
it is. Yeah, it can be persistent. So I can toggle it. So I can, if I want the screen real estate back, I can toggle it. And then if I log back in, it's going to be like this. So it is persistent. I generally just leave it open because I have a pretty large monitor that I work from normally. So I'm generally not want for screen real estate. But you can toggle that and it's persistent. Okay.
Stored as a user preference, I assume?
I assume that it is stored as. Let's check. Actually, why not? We're live here, so we can see.
While we're doing that, I forgot to mention that icon in the upper right shows that we're using. This is related to our Vancouver release, which just came out general availability last week. I should know that because I was there for it. So if you want to see all of the other content related to Vancouver, you can go to devlink.sn/Vancouver. And according to Lauren, this is our last, there's the link. This is our last Creator Toolbox official in the series. We may be adding 1 or 2 more things that seem to be sneaking onto our radar.
Oh, wow. I'm just going to assume you saved the best for last. So we'll just go with that. It looks like we do have user preferences. Strangely, all right. So we do have the 4 pickers here. What was the one? I think language was the other one. I don't know why we're not storing user preference for that. But these were all around the same. Oh, let's do it now. All right. So we'll toggle it. Let's refresh this list. And did anything change?
Something at the top went to false.
It did not change, I don't think. This was 2 minutes ago. So that's interesting. I don't know how we're tracking that.
I got 810 right now. Is it not 810?
I have 12, or 11. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Let's do it one more time.
Okay. Yeah, that one's 81054.
Oh yeah,
it's updating
there we
like
go.
the first
Yeah,
4 of
it's
them.
tracking them individually for some reason.
Yeah, that maybe you could come in here and turn one off that you didn't want.
Let's do that.
Oh no!
Oh, we can't change it.
No! Is it a scope thing? What? Wait a minute.
Let's cut that out. It worked, right? No, I can look into that one.
That's interesting. It's in a list. You click it, it's record not found.
It's there. Do any of these work? I just Z-booted this instance last night, which I don't recommend doing if you need it in the morning, because this morning was a little stressful. Well,
it's like getting a new laptop 2 days before Knowledge.
Let's just manually change it and domain picker. That's the one that we're not going to see. Let's try update set picker.
This is that audience this is how you reverse engineer things and understand a little bit better.
All right, we saved it, I think. Is it saved? Yeah, it's saved. All right, let's refresh. Oh, didn't do anything.
It might be a cache thing, but
we'll
move on. We're not going to wait for you to clear your cache and then let everything load.
Oh, I did a hard refresh here. Let's see if it.
Oh, okay.
Anything. No, it doesn't. Which is good. I don't really want people playing around with these user preferences anyway. So.
Sorry, I walked you into that one.
Yeah. Who cares how it works, y'all? It just works.
You asked for it. We delivered it.
All right, so let's talk about some workspace enhancements. So we kind of separate from our side of things. We kind of separate like developer and builder tooling from the fulfiller tooling. And so for here, we're going to look at fulfiller things that mostly affect fulfillers, but our admins and developers always want to know about those things because they're going to be asked to configure them. So let's look at some of these. These are all kind of ease of use of Workspace, making agents more productive as they're using Workspace. So I'm going to open up. This is a custom app I have that I used for Knowledge last year that I kind of use to do Workspace training and things like that. So the first thing I want to show is that one of the things that we added in the Vancouver release was better use of screen real estate for forms in Workspace. And so if you're looking at this form, it should look different than any other form you've ever seen in a Workspace. And that's because we've added something around how we use horizontal screen real estate. So if I drag this smaller, this is how Workspace forms have normally looked, with the label above the field and kind of everything in 2 columns here, which if you make this a lot bigger is not a great use of. If you make it bigger horizontally, it doesn't use screen real estate all that well because you still have all this spacing in between the fields. But if I do this, then my fields get a little closer together. So I think we can if you can see, like if you've got 2 columns and you can see 7 fields and you expand it, I think we get to like 11 fields or something like that. So it just lets you use the screen real estate a little better. And then it also, if you make it small enough, we get 1 column. So we're not saying anything about responsive design here. We're kind of saying things about breakpoints at different screen widths. Sure. Because it's not technically responsive, but yeah, if I minimize things, we just get kind of better screen real estate. If I enable compact mode through the settings, we've improved that a little bit. So if I go to preferences, display, and we add compact mode, that's gotten a little better. It's hard to demo that without looking at another form, but this has gotten a little better as well. I don't like compact mode because I use a pretty large monitor. as we have seen.
So this feels more like how the core platform UI, the traditional forms, would work.
Yeah, this form is really close to one of the traditional forms. And this was a lot of the feedback we got from customers. You know, we absolutely listen to customer feedback when, you know, we release things, and when we have so many customers that it's hard to like get everything right on the first go. And so we release something and then people use it and we get a lot of feedback from it. And we take that feedback, incorporate it back into the product and try to make it better every release. And so, you know, as somebody who now listens to a lot of customer feedback, sometimes we get customer feedback that's exactly opposite, which is always fun to try to you know, make better. But, you know, a lot of times we can add in different things to make life easier for everyone. So this was one of those where a big topic was around form spacing and that sort of thing and how we use real estate. All right, so I'm going to go this way. And the next thing that we're going to talk about here is email. So we have added an email tab to the activity stream component. I was going to say formatter. We don't support formatters in Workspace, but what we do is we build new components that replace formatters, so we no longer need Jelly in Workspace. So we added this email, this kind of email component to the activity stream component. At some point, I'm going to be able to say that more quickly. But this lets you compose email directly from the activity stream, which is really helpful if you need to look at, you know, values on the form, if you want to look at activity. If you remember before this, you either had to build something in the sidebar. Let's get rid of the sidebar. Whoa. You either had to build something in the sidebar, or you could say compose email, open a new tab. Nobody really liked working from a different tab than the details tab, which totally makes sense. I wouldn't want to do that either. And so we've added in here a couple other enhancements. You can now drag and drop people from different fields. And sometimes it feels silly talking about this because this is all normal things that most email clients can do. But there are also things that you've not been able to do from any ServiceNow email client in the past. The other big thing with email is that if you forward an email, you can choose to also forward attachments, which was actually a pretty big piece of feedback from customers. So that was pretty helpful as well. And this is not the last email enhancement you will see, Safe Harbor. We are really looking to make the email client within Workspace kind of look, feel, and behave like email clients that you're used to using. So you'll continue to see enhancements there. I think at some point we wanted to kill email. It didn't work. Everybody uses email. It's never going away.
Right.
So we're embracing it, and we're going to make it all easier to do from within ServiceNow. All right, so that's email. We also did some things with the activity stream here, where if you see the activity stream, you can see there's a few different things in here. We've added some filtering capabilities to the activity stream.
Ooh. Uh-oh. I think we lost Brad for a second. His screen is still working, but his camera seems to have disappeared. This is I feel like we're doing ventriloquism here. He's still moving the cursor around. So let me see if I can figure out. Now, he must be logged in with our developer program because he said, 1 sec, I did not type that. So I'm noticing a few things that maybe were there or were not there before. You guys can tell me. The colored icons certainly stand out nicely. I mean, I would have initially thought those would be the avatars or the little circle images, but the colors. Oh, here it comes.
Can you hear me now, Chuck? Oh, there we go.
Yes. Brad, were the colored icons next to the names new, or was that there before?
I think we've done that for a while in Workspace here. But yeah, sorry about that. I have this fancy camera that is so fancy that sometimes it just stops working. But anyway, I also have a backup camera because sometimes the fancy one stops working. So that's what we're using now. Anyway, I was talking about filter sets, and we've got these filter sets. I can filter down to a conversation. I can just do my filtering here where I can look at different post types. I can look at field changes. On a ticket like this, it may seem kind of silly to be filtering because there's barely anything in the activity stream. But I think we've all worked with tickets where maybe it's been open for 6 months and you've got 1,000 entries in the activity stream, and you're trying to find like, hey, what are all the emails that were sent out? Or how many times did this one field change? And now I can do all of that through the filtering. And then I can also create a filter set and give it a name so that later on I can use the same set of filters. So this is something that for admins and developers, you may not care a ton, but for your agents, they're really going to care about this, especially on tickets that have been open for a long time.
Heck yeah.
All right. And then I think my last thing is around attachments. I have a record with an attachment open. Here we go.
You were holding out on me. I didn't get this into tech now. Or did this come out in like store release 1 or something?
No, it was there. It was just little. So the other thing is I can now add custom actions to attachments. So this is another piece of feedback that we heard where people wanted to do things other than just download, remove, or rename. Like maybe you want to send it or something like that. You can add custom actions here with attachments. There are other things that we know people want to do in terms of maybe filtering out attachments and things like that we're looking at in the future. But for now, it's kind of this custom attachment action here. All right. So before we get into UI Builder, there's one other thing I want to show. And we went over this in great detail in a UI Builder Live episode from a couple of weeks ago. And in addition to going through this Chrome extension, Gabby sang on it. So if you had any doubts about whether you wanted to check it out, you should absolutely check it out. So why is this not working? Okay. So there's a new Chrome extension. There we go. And it is called Next Experience Developer Tools. It was called Dex Developer Tools, but we realized we had 2 things named Dex, and so we renamed it to Next Experience Developer Tools, which I hope makes more sense anyway. So we have this new Chrome extension. If you go to, there's a link somewhere I can post later on. But if you search Next Experience Developer Tools in the Chrome store, you'll find it. But anyway, what we get is when we open an experience, it has to be a Next Experience page. So if you look at a page in Classic environment, it's not going to show up. There you go, Earl. Or was that Lauren? Sorry.
I can't tell anymore.
I thought maybe he grabbed it from the old... from the other show. Anyway,
you got a plus in the comments for that one.
There we go.
You like that extension.
So yeah, if you've been working with UIB pages, you are going to love this extension. So if you noticed, I came over into this Next Experience Inspector. And one of the things about this new framework that we have is that it is Shadow DOM based. And so it can be hard to inspect what's happening from the regular console through the elements. And so this is actually an extension we've been using internally for a while, and the team kind of edited it so that we could release it externally. But all you have to do is download and install it, open up a Next Experience page. You'll get 2 new tabs here for Inspector and Profiler, and we'll walk through real quick what these do. But one of the things I can do is I can click on the little inspector and come in here, and I know this is a thing. So let's click on it. And we can see I've got this component called Now Record Common UI Action Bar. So I can see a few things from here, like the component ID. And then the best thing, my favorite thing that I can see is the component properties. So this is something that you can see in UI Builder what's being passed into a component, but most of the time it's kind of dynamic. And so it's hard to see what the actual values are. So I can come in here and click through into these properties and see how we're passing things into some of these properties. So this is really going to help for troubleshooting and also reverse engineering some of the stuff that we ship. We have some components. Most of our components are pretty well documented and they're pretty simple. And then we have a few components that are not as well documented, or maybe we document everything that's supposed to go in there, but it doesn't quite make sense to you. This would let you take something like the calendar component or the Kanban component or the Gantt component and really see all of the data that's being passed into each of the properties of this component, and kind of reverse engineer that and do it yourself.
Nice.
It's also helpful if you've built a page and have a component that's not displaying the way that you want it to. You can come in here and look at the properties and see what's being passed in. We can look at the component's internal state. If you're not using custom components, this is probably a little less helpful, as well as the action handlers. And then we can also see the actions that this component will take. For this component, it's a little more complex and doesn't directly take any actions. But that's there. We have actions. So if I were to, there we go. So let's say I were to mouse over a button. I think we'll see an action. If I click on a button, we'll definitely see an action.
Cool.
And so we can kind of see what those actions are. We can copy them. Some of these actions we can, if it's an action that's taken in UIB, like I resized an element, I can refire it without actually clicking on something,
wow.
which could be helpful for troubleshooting.
Yeah.
So I can also change the payload, right? So if I wanted to refire an action, but change the payload that's getting passed into that action or into that event handler, I can do that. So some really powerful stuff in here. I can look at transactions. This is a little probably less helpful for external people. And then I can also see some different logs. So that's that. In the interest of time, let's move on to the profiler real quick. So the profiler is really centered around performance. So what I can do is I could say, hey, I know people maybe don't like a certain page in terms of performance, or maybe there's a page that's really important to my company, whether it's like the instance landing page or SOW's home page. I could reload that page. And then right now I'm tracking the performance of the page until it's loaded. So I think it's probably all the way loaded now. I'm going to hit done. And we're going to get this flame chart of all of the different things that are loading and the time frame of this. I can also drill into it and see, hey, we've got a spike here. What's going on in this spike? And then everything changes. I can click into these things. I get a donut chart at the bottom that tells me how many events were fired and which events they were. And then the other thing I can do is I can download this baseline.
Yeah.
And then I can use it later on. So it's always good if you're trying to do, if you're trying to do any sort of performance troubleshooting, it's really helpful if you have a baseline, because somebody can tell you that something's slow and you can load a page and say, this seems a little slow. But if you don't have anything to compare it against, it's pretty tough to troubleshoot that.
This is impressive. I have to imagine this started as an internal thing and then somebody polished it up and said, let's make it available to everyone.
Yes, it is definitely internal tools. One of the big use cases for this is for our own support teams to do troubleshooting and performance. And so once we kind of made it available to them, we thought, let's also make it available publicly. Couple of quick things here. I can also run multiple baselines and then I can compare them. And I can also run a baseline, download it, and then load it into a different instance and compare different instances So if I have
Yeah.
my dev instance and test instance are running really differently for some reason, I can compare those and see where the difference lies.
We've been there before, Brad.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, because you had this system property, or there's something in dev that's
Yeah.
just causing this horrific bottleneck somewhere of a resource you need.
Yep. Or they're like, what is this code? And then maybe don't let Brad write code anymore. Who knows? All right, that's my dev tools. And then this last section we're going to get into is UI Builder specific. I saved it for last because this is, really what I care a lot about is UI Builder and the builder. And, oh, this is a new instance. I don't have my row at.
That's a preference, I know.
So we're going to get into into UI Builder here. And what are we going to look at first? Let's take a look first at, let's open up a page. And I think this is the right one to open up. But the first thing probably not the first thing you'll notice because it's hidden up at the top right. But we do have this What's New button. And if you click on it, it's going to tell you the 4 main things we did in UIB for the Vancouver release. And so this will be something that'll be available in future releases. You'll see different things. And so we're really trying to do a better job of letting people know what's new when we come across a different release, because we know that when Chuck and I started 15-ish years ago, there was not that much going on in the platform. It was all pretty standard.
We've got UI policies now. You don't have to write a Resize script. That was about it.
That's right. Hey, workflow came out. That's pretty exciting.
Dictionary overrides. What a concept.
So now the platform is very broad, and all of our different applications are getting into some really complex use cases and doing some really great problem solving. But it can be hard to stay on top of all of those updates. So we're trying to do a better job from an in-product perspective of letting you know what's new without you having to read the release notes. Because again, reading the release notes is a different activity now than it was 15 years ago.
But it still follows the same pattern though, Brad. We're seeing what, not to use the word pattern again, but we're seeing what patterns customers have, what developers have, and how they're doing their roles, and then working to make that better. It's like, hey, you know what? People have been doing this one thing over and over, and it feels kind of janky. Let's work on improving that. So this is one step closer. I want to see this like everywhere throughout the platform.
Yes. And, we're kind of working on some big projects internally around kind of unifying how we do a lot of these things. Like Next Experience itself is an exercise in like, let's unify all of the custom UI that we build. Instead of building some Angular and React pages and all sorts of things in UI pages, let's really standardize on this. And so I hope we see this What's New button in other builders as well.
Very helpful.
But yeah. So you can see, I'm not going to click into all of these because I don't want the What's New pop-up to steal my thunder. But let's go ahead and click out of that. I should change scopes into the scope I want here.
You get a new truck.
Yay. This is actually my old truck. I have, my family is too large for me to own this vehicle anymore. So
have you gone to school bus yet?
No school bus. But yeah, so we've got a few things that are new. So what's new? The other cool things that we have are up here. So let's go ahead and make some changes. And let's say I want to delete this button, make a change. So you'll notice I have undo redo now. So my 2 favorite things about the Vancouver release. The first one is undo redo, and undo redo. I can kind of go back selectively. I can, just hit the button. It supports the standard keyboard shortcuts. It works across saves. So if I save the page and don't like what happened, I can undo back before my page save, which is a pretty big deal. It goes back, I think, about 20 steps. So after that, we're not tracking anymore. If you exit this page, you lose the undo redo. If you close out a UI builder, you lose the undo redo. Those are things that are the current state, but they may not be the current state forever, and they may not be the case forever. But for now, it's about 20 steps, and you have to be on the page the whole time.
Now, did I hear right too? If you made a change that's in, say, a hidden panel or something, and you do an undo, it will bring you back to that panel.
Maybe. I don't know. Let's see.
I thought I saw that somewhere. But put a comment in the code or something, or
yeah, let's do client state parameters, and then we'll close out of it.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of undo back here. Oh, I went to the wrong spot.
Ah.
All right, let's try again. All right, so here's a panel. I'm going to make the panel go away. I don't think it's going to do that. It did highlight.
Oh, okay. It
did it. Yeah.
Sort of got you there.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and get rid of that button again. I'll click on it. Where's my button? There we go. All right, so let's delete my button. So I deleted this button. I haven't saved the page yet, but before I save, I want to preview what that's going to look like. And so this may be the most useful feature in UI Builder in this release for existing pages. And this is letting me preview the page that I'm on. This is the runtime of the page. It's fully rendered here. But I haven't saved the page. And what it's actually previewing is not the page itself. It's previewing the specific variant that I'm looking at. And the reason that's important is because if I have, 5 variants of a page, and a variant is basically a different version of a page I'm showing based on the audience that's seeing the page or the URL parameters passed into the page. And so if I hit record, I may show people different record pages depending on what table they're passing in. And previous to Vancouver, if I wanted to preview a variant I was on, I had to save the page and open it in the runtime. And the problem with that is if the conditions for the page or my audience was different than the variant I was seeing, I couldn't preview it. And so what I would have to do is like change the order of the page or change things passed in or give myself a different role in order to just test that page. And so, for most cases, it wasn't a huge deal, but for some cases, it was really difficult because I may forget to reorder it afterwards. And then, I push it to production and we've got an incident. So this is really helpful, letting me preview something without saving and preview the current variant that I'm on.
Oh, yeah.
What else do we have? All right, let's go. Let's do some styling. All right, so if you are used to UI Builder, the styles panel is kind of constantly evolving. And we think this latest evolution of the panel is going to be really helpful for people, especially for people that aren't CSS experts, which I think is most of us.
That'd be me. I am always mixing up margin and padding every time.
So we've done a few things. One of the first things we did was we tried to make everything a little bit more visual. So margin and padding is a great example. It takes a while before you really know, you really know which goes to which. So margin is on the outside of what I'm doing. Padding is on the inside. So if I have a container and I want to make everything inside it have a little bit of space around it, I use padding. On the outside is margin. But that is, it's not like those terms are really self-explanatory.
Nope.
So you have to learn it. So we can see here, we can see what the margin and padding is, and then we can also see what each of the different values are. So with margin and padding, I can set them all together. So I could say, let's give some huge padding here, or that was a margin. Or I can set them differently, where I can say, on the top, I want it to be 0. And then on the bottom, I want it to be 0. right? And so it lets you target all of those areas without having to know a ton about what that is. The other thing you might have noticed is that when I set it, instead of just value numbers, I get a graphical representation of how big that is, which is really helpful because, you know, XL and 3XL, like I kind of know what those shirt sizes mean, but I don't really know what they refer to when it comes to CSS. So those can be helpful. And then I still have the option to kind of break down into custom CSS where I could use REM or, you know, any of those other options that I have. And so we've done that more than just margin and padding. That's the biggest one. We've kind of shown, hey, here's the difference between Flexbox and Grid. Our sizing is a little more helpful in terms of the values here. And then we've also kind of done with the background, and then border is the other big one where, you know, thickness type, we show the color, and then corner shape, you know, like most rounded and less rounded doesn't mean a lot to me, but when I see it, I can say, oh yeah, that looks good. So those are just some differences in styling. The other thing we've done is what we call progressive disclosure, where we try not to overwhelm you the first time you come in here. And then if you need to do more formatting and styling, you can hit show advanced layout options, because, you know, these are all fairly confusing to somebody when you see them all at the same time. And so we're going to do more progressive disclosure with different things in the future. But just something to make it a little bit easier and more approachable for somebody coming into UIB. All right, nice. So now we're going to create a new page. What's the best way to create? I don't need any changes. All right, so we're going to create a page from scratch, and this was always pretty overwhelming for a lot of people. This was like kind of overwhelming for people because, you know, how do I lay out a page that's blank from scratch, especially if I have a pretty good idea of what I want that design to look like. Let's click open an editor. I would love for us to remove that step and just put me in the page. So one of the things you can see is that, you may not notice this unless you're in UIB all the time like I am, but we have this new like pink border and some pink options here. And what that means is that I'm looking at a container here rather than a component. And so that'll make more sense in just a minute. But once I go add component, we've changed the component toolbox a little bit where we've separated out layouts and components so that, and it's contextual. So if I don't have a layout on the screen, it's going to show me layouts and say, hey, you probably need one of these. And then if I'm in a layout and adding something into an individual container, it's probably going to show me components. So we're trying to be a little smarter and make things easier for people that are adding things. We also have this little did you know, we think you should start with layouts. And layouts were really this is one of the things that took the most work from our engineering teams, because they really kind of rebuilt how layouts work to make it easier for people to create pages from scratch. If you did this pre-Vancouver, you were basically adding individual containers to pages. And if you needed to do something like, you know, let's say we want this kind of side panels experience, which is pretty standard, where maybe these are going to be blank and I only want content in the middle. I add this layout and I can see that, you know, I've got 20% on the sides, 60 in the middle. I could change this. I can drag these to be smaller cool. And, you know, change how this works. I can add additional columns if I want to. I can nest layouts within each other. So like I could say, hey, in here, let's do 2 columns, right? And so we've got some nested layouts here. You know, I can add things. And then the other thing that's kind of cool is let's just add some random components in here. Let's say none. And then let's add, I can still add a container. We'll add a Flexbox container. And then in that container, let's add another stylized text because that's my favorite. And then let's workflow it. All right. So one of the things that I can do is we've kind of improved the stage controls, as we call them. You can see that since I'm looking at a component, it's blue instead of pink. But I can also come in and from the component itself, I can navigate up and down. So I can navigate up to the container. I can navigate up to the column layout or down to the specific, the specific component. So this is something, if you have a really complicated page, which, if you have a page where it's doing a lot of things, this content tree may get pretty long and confusing. And so it can be helpful just to click in here, and our targeting is a little better now. When I mouse over something, I get the dotted line around it, which makes things a little easier to target. But then I can walk up and down the content structure, from the stage itself, which is pretty nice.
This is looking good.
Yeah, I think we're getting there in terms of being able to build out really nice custom experiences with UIB. So this is my two components here are very impressive, but with this column layout, you can really do a lot. And the nice thing about the column layout is you can really do a lot of things within this format and change things and build out some pretty advanced pages pretty quickly. And so there is one last thing that I want to demo. And to do that, we're going to use a button. And I cannot handle the button being in the very corner, so we have to give it some padding. It can say button, that's fine with me. It just can't be all the way in the corner. So we added a new feature called Popovers. And they live in the modals and popovers section. It used to just be the modal section. So if you don't know what a modal is something that you click on. It comes up, shows up in the middle of the page, and really takes the focus of the user to the modal. So generally, with a modal, you want somebody to do something and then hit a button and close it out or click out of it. With a popover, and show what a popover is. Popover is something that you can trigger on any event, and it's going to kind of show up anchored to whatever triggered it. And it's something more informational, or if you want somebody still to be able to use the rest of the page, you don't necessarily need their focus, but you want to show them more information. That's where a popover comes in. So let's add some stylized text. And we'll give it real text here, or kind of real. Popover, we're happy about it. And of course, we're going to add some margin. There we go. And then let's go ahead and trigger this popover from our button here. So I'm going to click into the button. And then we're going to add a open popover event handler to the button event. So I'm going to choose an existing popover. This is one reason why you should always rename your popovers and buttons, but I didn't because I'm lazy. So we're going to preview that. Remember, I haven't saved anything yet. So if I click on the button, I now get this popover. You can configure where your popover shows up. I could have it show up in the middle. I think I could have it show up in the middle of the screen. And so in the popover, you can do anything in a popover. So you could add buttons to it. It could be super interactive, but you have a lot of options in the popover. As soon as I click somewhere else on the page, the popover goes away.
Is there any visual indication to know there is a popover there? Or
there is not. I mean, there could be. That would be kind of up to you to build into your experience. There's nothing, by default. But you could build something.
So we do have a comment that says, hey, could those be used for hints on fields and etc.?
Sort of. Fields already have some hint functionality built into them. And once you get into a form component and try to do things within the form component, it gets a little more complex. The answer is yes, you could fire a popover based on something you're doing from a field, but it's probably not as simple as you would want it to be, I guess is the nicest way to say that. One other thing I wanted to show real quick, I know we're running out of time here.
Okay.
Is one of the things we did with modals in this release was we allowed people to resize modals. So this was a big, if you've got a modal where somebody has to fill it out, fill out a form or something, you might want to enable a resize on that modal. And that just means somebody will be able to, in the runtime, come in and drag and drop or drag that window to be a lot larger. For the modal, you can control how big and how small they can make it. But it was a nice little enhancement there. We did get a bit of feedback, especially if, you want somebody to like fill out a long form in a modal, like on a record page. You probably want them to be able to resize it if they're on a big monitor or something. Yeah, I think with that, that's just about everything I wanted to cover. I'd love to do a little bit of Q&A if anybody's got any questions about really anything we're doing with Next Experience or UIB workspaces.
I'm looking at the Q&A, see if they come up.
Earl Mrs. Bootstrap, thanks for that.
Yep. And just general comment from Deborah about this is way easier. It's not so overwhelming. And then she followed up and said, it's not that it was overly complex, just there were easier ways to do this elsewhere. And that's generally the track that we would take. It's like, how can I get this done the fastest?
Modal resize does mean that if you enable it, the end user can change the side of the modal.
Okay. Good clarification. I think that might be it. Give everybody a second to last minute any questions. Again, Hacktoberfest, devlink.sn/Hacktoberfest. I think we had a banner on there somewhere. We've got the CreatorCon call for content coming up soon. We've got the Devi's submission. Lots of stuff coming. So keep your eyes on the developer blog, devlink.sn/blog. If you use that short link, it will go to the right place either before or after we make this migration. we make these short links for us as much as you.
I'll also mention, so I know y'all are talking Hacktoberfest on Friday. We're doing a U&I Builder Live on Thursday, where we're going to talk a little bit of Hacktoberfest, but we're really going to talk about different Next Experience custom component UI Builder things you can do for Hacktoberfest. So some real specific projects. We're going to try not to steal any thunder from the big stream, which I think is going to be a lot of fun.
We've got World Forum events coming up. Are you going to be at any of those, Brad?
I think I'm going to be at the Dallas World Forum. So, yeah.
All right. Hope to see you there. I'll be at Dallas, Toronto, New York, and London. And we are working to make meetups, developer meetups, adjacent to all of those. So
great. That'll be fun.
All there. And with fingers crossed, I might get to see a longtime friend that I've never met face-to-face in Belgium.
Awesome.
Looking forward to that and looking forward to seeing everybody back here again real soon. Thanks for watching. And all that's left for us to say is take care, stay safe, and bye.